I think you just look at how each team has closed the season. The Clippers got back on track. Dallas has looked like a freight train since the All-Star break and the trade deadline improvements that they made. Health provided, which is never a sure thing with the Clippers. This is a series that could legitimately be a conference finals level matchup. And it has multiple superstars on each side, teams that have a lot at stake with how much they've invested and traded away in their current rosters. How are you feeling about this series? Does it excite you as much from over there on the East Coast?
It's the most exciting first round series because of all the things you already hinted at. Also, we've known that this was going to be the matchup for a couple of weeks now. It's pretty much been locked in. So you got to know that both of these coaching staffs have started their scouting for this series.
Yeah.
Probably a couple weeks ago, and that's on top of how familiar these teams are. Like this is the third meeting of sort of the Kawhi versus Luka versions of these teams. And so there's already that familiarity. There's already the history there. There's the idea that like kind of Luka owns the Clippers, even though he's actually never won this series. And then you have all that kind of stuff too. Plus Kyrie versus James Harden. So you got some new faces involved and all these things. I think that, look, the Mavericks are the hottest team in the league. They're 8-2 over their last 10 games. They look phenomenal. Everything seems to be clicking. I think what Luka has put together over this last month puts him legitimately in the MVP conversation. I know that we sort of just talk about like Jokic and then everybody else. I'm like, no, I might actually vote for Luka if I had to vote right now. He's been that good and that's sensational. So can he be the best player again in this series? I think the Clippers you have just like the mystery of them. First of all, is Kawhi going to play? Doesn't sound like Ty Lue knows, so nobody knows right now, except for maybe even Kawhi. We saw like the proof of concept in January with this team, and then they sort of lost it. They looked like world beaters, right? The Clippers did in January. Can they find that form again? Because if they can, then Dallas has a lot to worry about. But right now, the Mavericks are kind of going through their big run right now. So did the Clippers peak too early? Are the Mavericks peaking at the right time going into the playoffs? There's just so much involved here. And I just think that the X's and O's part of it is going to be fascinating because you have two X's and O's minded coaches between Jason Kidd and Ty Lue. You get two just rosters full of smart, experienced players. And like I said, they already know what they're coming up against. And so I just think that they're going to be prepared for it too.
Yeah, Dallas has been able to seal one of the first two in each of the previous two times they've played. I can't say road wins because one of them was in the bubble, but they've made it interesting, even dating back to when Luka was on his rookie contract. They play similarly, too, is the other thing, right? They play mismatch hunting, ISO scoring, go at you one-on-one ball, and Luka's just frankly gotten a lot better at that, even than he was back then, because he can make the pull-up three that eluded him for so much of the early part of his career. You add the Kyrie element and the James Harden element, two guys who also tend to want to do that. I think whichever team can steal some points in early offense is going to go a long way because these are also teams who, because of that tendency, they tend to play very, very slowly, even against kind of their better efforts. Sometimes I think from the coaching staff, they also haven't played since December. So that was kind of in the early part of when the Clippers looked like world beaters, as you called them, which I think was right. And then before Dallas made any of their moves. And then finally, I think they look so different than back then. In a lot of ways, the NBA does, because both these teams play centers now. This is not 6-7 ball anymore, the way that it was in the bubble and in 2021. This is Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively, Ivica Zubac, Daniel Tice, all these guys that would have played no role in those original series when Nick Batum and Maxi Kleber were playing center. Now here they are, and I think whichever center rotation, which I think both are a little shaky, a little limited in their own ways, whichever one of those groups can play better, I think that will actually go a long way toward deciding the series too, even if it's not the Stars.
I think it's a great call. And the other thing that's changed since those series also is the Clippers were so deep back then, right? Like we just looked at the depth of that roster. I think both of these teams are equally deep now. If anything, maybe the Mavericks are a little bit deeper than the Clippers at this point. And so depth is not going to be, I think, an advantage one way or the other in a major way. And so what does that mean? That means it comes down to the Stars, baby. And that's what we want. Like we want it at the end of the day. Who plays better? Is it going to be Kawhi or is it going to be Luka? And the win and whoever, and then of course you've got Paul George and James Harden and Kyrie Irving and all these other names, but like you're so spot on when you talk about Luka and how he's just evolved as a player, and what he is putting together this season. 34 points per game, right? I mean, it's the most anybody's scored per game since James Harden won his last MVP. I'm pretty sure, like 4 or 5 years ago. So, like, we can't just like overlook that. This guy is just putting up monstrous numbers, and so at the end of the day, maybe the Clippers just don't even have an answer for it, even though they employ Kawhi Leonard and Paul George.
I don't really think they do.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're asking me, hey, it's going to be decided by the stars, which star do you like better, and that's your pick, I'm probably going Dallas. If that's the only rubric I have, especially because the other guy isn't playing right now, which is an annual April tradition, and that's unfortunate. I'm not trying to make it into a joke. It sucks that this guy cannot make it through a season in Kawhi Leonard, but the reality is he made it through April last year and then only made it 2 playoff games in, got hurt. So that's a really big ask, and it's 2 teams that are both very good, probably the 2 best teams to be facing off directly, but still a lot of uncertainty around the Clippers because
outside
of
the
that.
Prediction, yeah, even just like outside of the prediction part of it, just like if you were to do like a trustiness ranking, the Mavs blow out the Clippers in terms of trustiness, right?
Yeah. I mean, the trust part of that I was thinking too, and not to bring us back to role players, but the Mavs depth that you mentioned, they also have more guys I would trust to throw at the opposing team stars. Like, Terrence Mann has to play the best basketball I think he's ever played, primarily on Kyrie, because I think we'll probably see PG and Kawhi get the Luka matchup, but that's one guy. Yeah. The Mavs, it's like Derek Jones, you got Dante Exum, you got even, some guys that they can put on switches, you have some unproven dudes who I mean, would it surprise you if they saw the court? They just have like at least a handful of players, whereas with the Clippers, their superstars have to play awesome defense on top of being really good scorers for it to be competitive.
Yep. It's a great call. Yeah, the Mavs almost just have like layers of guys that they can get to. Just unbelievable offseason by them, by the way. Just felt like almost all of their free agent signings on like these minimum deals ended up working out. You add a PJ Washington to the mix who defensively can do some stuff. You're absolutely right. Like, hey, Derek Jones Jr., Dante Exum, Josh Green, like just go at these guys, and it's just you don't have to do it for 36 minutes. We just need you to do it for 10 to 15 minutes, and then once you're worn out, we'll throw somebody else at it, and then they'll take it. And so that way you don't have to run into a wall either. So I probably would take the Mavericks if I had to make a pick on this series, but it's either way, it's going to be awesome.